I wasn't a stranger to traveling for my work. I had done it plenty of times before. Last week I found myself in Hollow Creek, a small town in deep Appalachia. I thought it would inspire my next article about local legends. At first glance, the town looked picturesque, nestled among those jagged mountains. But something felt off. The weathered cabins gave off a strange vibe. I rented a small, rustic cabin on the edge of the forest, hoping to immerse myself in the folklore. I've never stopped thinking about what happened there. At first, everything settled into a routine. I set up my laptop and planned to write about the town's creepy legends. One night, as I typed away, I heard a knocking outside. It was faint, almost like branches tapping against the cabin. I shrugged it off and assumed it was an animal, just a raccoon or something. But the sound kept coming. Thud, thud, thud. Each noise chipped away at my concentration, and I grew anxious. Maybe it was my imagination playing tricks on me. The next night, while I tried to write, I noticed strange lights flickering in the trees. White and yellow, dancing like fireflies, but there were none around. I felt a jolt of adrenaline. Should I step outside? Fear held me back. I glanced out the window instead. It felt like a scene from a movie, but no one owned a camera. Over the next few days, I began to hear whispers while walking the trails. Soft voices drifted through the trees. I wanted to know their stories, but whenever I asked the locals, they hesitated. Their eyes darted away, and they always fell silent at the critical moment. They shared bits and pieces, but never the whole truth. Maybe they thought I was looking for a joke. Maybe it was too serious for them. One afternoon I wandered deeper into the woods and stumbled upon an old clearing. It was quiet there, a strange stillness around me. I started jotting down notes. Suddenly I heard a faint laugh. It felt like someone stood right behind me. I spun around, but nothing was there. My heart raced. That night, I couldn't shake the discomfort. I lay in bed, sheets soaked with sweat. It felt like eyes were watching me through the window. I heard scratching noises like nails against wood, followed by more knocking. Was this all part of an elaborate joke? I wanted to brush it off, but each sound left me more unsettled. Then came the moment I can't forget. I sat up, pushing the fear away, when I heard a voice, clear as day, asking, "Why are you here?" My blood froze. I turned towards the darkened corner of my cabin. I swear I saw a figure standing near the door. I blinked, and it was gone. The air turned cold, wrapping around me like a thick fog. All I could think was that I wanted to leave, but was it too late? Even now, as I sit here reflecting, a lingering sensation of dread fills the air. Hollow Creek feels like it's still drawing me back into its strange, dark embrace. The next morning, I struggled to shake off the previous night's events. I needed to regain my focus, to dive deeper into the folklore that drew me here. I decided to visit the local diner, a hub for gossip and stories. The smell of coffee and greasy eggs surrounded me as I walked in, but I could feel the tension shift when I entered. Conversations halted, eyes turned. I chose a booth in the corner and ordered breakfast. As I waited, I glanced around, hoping to overhear something, anything about the legends. A couple of old-timers were huddled together, their voices low. I caught snippets of words like the Watcher and the Lost. My interest piqued. I waited patiently for the right moment to approach them. After a few minutes, I gathered my courage and slid into their booth with a smile. "Mind if I join you?" They exchanged glances but nodded, albeit warily. "What brings you to Hollow Creek?" one old man asked. His eyes were intense, as if trying to decipher my intentions. "I'm here to write about local legends," I said, keeping my tone light. "I've heard stories about the forest and some strange happenings." The men stiffened. "You don't want to be poking around in there," the other one said, his voice quavering slightly. "The woods hold secrets best left alone." "Secrets? What do you mean?" My heart raced. This was exactly what I wanted. They exchanged another look, and the first man shifted uncomfortably. heard about the disappearances?" I nodded. The locals had mentioned a handful of people going missing over the years, but no one would elaborate. "They say the trees take what they want," he continued, his gaze distant. "People shouldn't tread too deep." I leaned in closer, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. "But what happened to them?" "They vanish without a trace," he replied, shaking his head. "It's like they were swallowed whole." At that moment my breakfast was served, but my appetite vanished. My mind raced with the implications. What if I stumbled upon something I wasn't meant to? I glanced out the window at the looming forest. The whispers I had heard felt more threatening now. As I pushed my plate aside, something outside caught my eye. A flash of movement in the trees. I focused harder, squinting. It could have been a deer or just a trick of the light, but something about it felt off. I shot a look back at the old men. They were fixated on my expression. "Did you see something?" the first man asked, voice low. I hesitated. "I'm not sure, just the trees, I think." "Leave it be," the second man urged, his eyes wide. No good comes from curiosity out there. Feeling their words weigh on me, I paid my tab and slid out of the booth. Before I left, I spotted a tattered book on the table. The cover was faded but read, "Legends of the Hollow." It must have been left behind by another traveler. I felt drawn to it, but as I reached for it, one of the men grasped my wrist firmly. "Don't," he said, voice grave. "You don't want what's inside." With that, I snatched my hand back, fear coursing through me. I left the diner, the ominous weight of their warning following me. The air felt different outside, charged with a sense of urgency. That's when I saw it. A flicker of light deep within the woods, faint and beckoning. My heart raced as curiosity battled with my instinct to turn back. I felt the pull of the forest again, stronger, like it was inviting me into its depths. The temptation was almost too much. I took a tentative step toward the tree line, wondering what I might uncover, or lose, if I ventured into the unknown. As I stepped closer to the forest, a chill ran down my spine. The trees loomed above me, their twisted branches like fingers reaching out. That flicker of light danced just beyond grasp, flickering in an almost hypnotic rhythm. My instincts screamed at me to turn around, but my curiosity dragged me deeper. I paused at the edge, peering into the depth of the woods. The light seemed to pulse, drawing me in. A soft rustle swept through the leaves, almost like a whisper. My heart thudded louder. The stories from the diner echoed in my mind. Disappearances, secrets, the trees taking what they wanted. With a shaky breath, I took another step forward, feeling the cool air shift around me. I remembered the book at the diner. What could have been inside? Were the pages filled with warnings, tales more sinister than the old men had let on? The urgency swelled in my chest as I thought about what I might learn, but fear clawed at my resolve. As I moved deeper into the forest, the light flickered again, illuminating a small clearing ahead. It was bright enough to catch my attention, contrasting sharply with the shadows around me. I hesitated, torn between fear and the need to know. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, heart racing, but no one was there. The rustling continued, growing louder, like someone, or something, was watching me. My pulse quickened as dread settled into my bones. I was not alone. I pressed forward, reaching the clearing. The light expanded to reveal a delicate pool, glowing with an otherworldly luminescence. I knelt, enchanted. The surface shimmered, swirling colors beneath like a celestial ocean. But as I leaned closer, the air turned heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. I then noticed something strange around the pool. Old stones were arranged in a circle, with symbols carved into them. They looked ancient, worn by time and weather. The realization struck me. This was not a natural occurrence. Someone had been here before me. Just then, a figure stepped out from behind a tree, cloaked in shadows. My heart stopped. It stood still, just outside the edge of the clearing, its features obscured. Panic surged through me. I couldn't tell if it was human or something else entirely. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking. The figure didn't respond, but I felt its eyes on me, piercing through the darkness. Just as I opened my mouth to shout again, the figure stepped into the light, and a gasp caught in my throat. I recognized it instantly. It was a local I had seen at the diner, the one who had warned me. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. "You shouldn't have come." My heart raced. I saw the light," I stammered. He stepped closer, breath visible in the cool air. "The forest doesn't take kindly to intruders. You need to leave now." But before I could react, a low growl rumbled from the trees behind him, low and menacing. Fear washed over me. Something was coming, and the night was just beginning. I jumped back from the glowing pool, my eyes darting between the figure and the darkness where the growl echoed. The man seemed to understand my fear. "We have to go now," he urged, grabbing my wrist with a surprisingly strong grip. "Wait, what was that?" I managed to ask, my pulse racing. His gaze shifted to the trees, an anxious flicker crossing his face. "I can't explain. We're not alone." He pulled me away from the pool, urgency in every motion. I stumbled behind him as we moved deeper into the shadows. The growl came again, louder this time, followed by a snap of branches. I couldn't see what was making the noise, but I felt its presence lurking in the gloom. My breath quickened, fear rattling me to my core. "Stay close," he whispered sharply. "Don't make a sound." I nodded, though every instinct screamed at me to run. We darted through the underbrush, the branches clawing at my arms as if trying to pull me back. Every rustle in the foliage made me flinch. I didn't want to look behind us, but curiosity pinned my eyes to the darkness. I half expected to see glowing eyes staring right back at me. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes, we reached a dense thicket. The man pushed through the tangled vines and weeds, leading me away from the sounds of the growl. The trees were close and suffocating, and the cool air felt heavy enough to crush me. Finally, he stopped in a small clearing, just big enough for us to catch our breath. "Listen," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We'll have to wait here. It's safe for now." "Safe?" I spat, disbelief flooding my voice. "You just said I shouldn't be here." "Exactly," he replied, his eyes flicking nervously to the shadows. "But it's too late to turn back. If those creatures catch our scent, they won't stop until they find us." "Creatures?" My stomach churned at the thought. "What do you mean? What's out there?" "Legends," he murmured, shaking his head. "Things that don't belong in this world. The light you saw, it's a bait, drawing people like us in." I was about to ask more, but then I heard it again. A rustling, closer this time. The sound moved stealthily, making the hairs on my neck stand up. Panic welled up in my chest. "What are we waiting for? We need to go." The man's grip tightened on my arm. "Not yet. We have to wait until it passes." My heart pounded as the underbrush crackled. I felt a sensation that my feet were rooted to the ground, unable to flee. Then I saw movement, a shadow flitting through the trees, something large and menacing. That's when I realized. The breath caught in my throat as the shadow paused just outside our clearing. It stood still, sniffing the air, searching for us. I couldn't move. I could hardly breathe. I was trapped, and whatever was out there was drawing closer. The shadow lingered, its shape more defined now. I squinted, trying to make out any details, but all I could see was a dark silhouette against the deepening twilight. Time stretched, every second filled with tension. I could hear the man's breath, shallow and quick. Then, just as suddenly as it had stopped, the shadow moved again, gliding silently away from our hiding spot. I let out a shaky breath I didn't realize I was holding. "What was that?" I whispered, hoping he could shed some light on the terror stalking us. "More than you need to know right now," he replied, his eyes scanning the tree line. "But we can't stay here much longer. They have a knack for tracking." "Tracking?" The word sent a ripple of panic through me. "What do you mean by that?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved a few paces away and crouched down, scanning the ground. My gut twisted. I wanted to run, to find some semblance of safety, but the pressing need to know kept me rooted. "That's it," he said, pointing to a cluster of prints in the soil. "They've been here. We need to move." I leaned closer, my heart racing again. The prints looked enormous, distinct claw marks bordering a wide pad. There was nothing like this around my home. "What kind of animal makes those?" "Not an animal," he replied tersely. "It's worse than that." Before I could digest his words, there was a crash in the distance. Branches snapped violently. The man's eyes widened with a mix of fear and urgency. "We have to go, now." I didn't need to be told twice. We took off deeper into the thicket, branches whipping past as the noise behind us grew louder. My mind raced. What could move like that? The darkness enveloped us, and my stomach churned with dread. Suddenly, a guttural sound echoed through the trees, drowning out everything else. It was a terrible, ragged noise that sent chills down my spine. I felt sick, knowing we were running straight toward it. "Keep going," the man urged, pulling me along. I focused on his silhouette ahead, following close as the forest closed in around us. Just as we crested a small hill, I heard a crash again, this time closer. I fought the urge to look back. Instead, I pushed myself to run faster. We crossed into another clearing, one illuminated by silver light, and that's when I saw it, a figure standing at the edge watching us. It was tall and covered in a thick, matted fur. It had eyes that glinted in the moonlight, filled with a cunning hunger. "Get behind me!" the man shouted, instinctively positioning himself to shield me. I stepped back, heart racing even more. This was no faint shadow anymore. It was a real threat. In that moment, fear shifted into something sharper, more focused. I realized I needed to find a way out, not just for me, but for both of us. The creature took a step forward, muscles rippling beneath its fur. It snarled, revealing rows of jagged teeth. And then, without hesitation, it lunged. Everything went dark. I woke to cold dampness pressing against my face and the bitter smell of earth. Groaning, I pushed myself up, blinking against the piercing light filtering through the foliage. I was alive. Somehow. Panic surged as I remembered the creature. Where was the man? I scrambled to my feet, my heart pounding. "Hey!" I called out, my voice cracking. "Are you there?" No answer came. I scanned the clearing around me, but it was empty. The trees stood silently, as though they were the only witnesses to what had just happened. I could still hear the echo of its growls in my mind, and that only heightened my fear. The last I remembered was the creature lunging, but everything that followed was a blur. Swallowing hard, I turned, hoping to retrace our steps. It felt wrong, like I was being watched. I quickly moved toward the cluster of trees where we had hidden before. Maybe he was there, regrouping. But as I walked, each rustle made my skin prickle. Then, amidst the underbrush, I spotted something glinting. A small metallic object half buried in the dirt. Crouching down felt like a risky move, yet I had to know what it was. My fingers brushed against it and I pulled it out. It was a silver pendant, engraved with markings that looked almost ancient. "What the hell?" I muttered, turning it over in my palm. The weight felt significant, like it held some history I couldn't quite grasp. Suddenly, a noise interrupted me. A low, rumbling growl reverberated from the thicket behind me. I whipped around, clutching the pendant like a weapon. The trees rustled ominously, shadows shifting. My heart raced as the air thickened with dread. Whatever had been chasing us was still here. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself. "Just stay calm." I backed away slowly, my eyes darting to the tree line. That's when I noticed a flicker of movement. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at me from the darkness, and my breath caught in my throat. Alone and unarmed, I felt small, just a target waiting to be hunted. Then the growling intensified, and I realized I didn't have much time. I turned and sprinted toward the nearest path, now a random trail rather than a predetermined escape. The forest around me seemed alive with sound, branches snapping, leaves rustling. But then, just as I thought I was gaining distance, a shadow flitted past me, darting through the trees. I skidded to a halt. "No, no, no," I gasped, my chest tightening. The tracking felt far too familiar. I needed to find the man, but where could he be? Before I could mull it over, I heard something else, a shout, far off but desperate. "Back! Get back!" It was him. My heart leaped, and without a second thought I ran toward the sound, terror mingled with hope. As I raced forward, the trees around me thinned out, revealing another clearing ahead. My eyes widened. I stumbled into the open air, and my stomach dropped. The scene before me was surreal. There he was, backed up against a gnarled tree, holding a branch like a weapon, facing not just one but several creatures emerging from the dark. He looked at me, urgency etched on his face. "Run!" he yelled, desperation coloring his voice. In an instant I knew we were out of options, and running was our only choice. My heart raced. But there was more than fear driving me now. I could already feel the weight of purpose. I had to survive. We both did. And that was just the beginning. I broke into a sprint, heart pounding as I raced toward him. The creatures were closing in, their eyes gleaming like distant stars in the dimming light. The man raised the branch, gesturing for me to hurry. "Come on!" he shouted. But before I could make it to him, a growling creature lunged forward. I barely dodged it, sending my feet flying off the ground in a desperate leap. I could feel its breath on my back. There was no way I could let it catch me. I dove past the man, and he swung his branch, connecting with the creature's side. It yelped, momentarily knocking it off balance, but more were coming. We had no time for hesitation. "We need to move," he urged, his face tight with fear. I nodded, adrenaline coursing through me. We dashed toward the thicket at the edge of the clearing, moving deeper into the woods, pushing branches out of our way. "What the hell are those things?" I gasped, as we entered another tangle of trees, their twisted roots grabbing at my feet. "I don't know," he replied, breathless. "I thought I could handle it, but there were too many. I thought they were just stories." "Stories?" I asked, glancing back. The creatures were still in pursuit, their growls echoing like a haunting chorus. "This isn't just some ghost tale, this is real." "I know," he shouted, frustration evident in his voice. "Just keep running." We burst into another small clearing, realizing too late that we had entered a dead end. There was a steep hill to our right and a dense thicket to the left, but behind us, the creatures were closing in. The weight of the pendant felt sharper in my pocket, as though it pulsed with a life of its own. "What do we do?" I whispered, panic threatening to overtake me. The surroundings were eerily quiet beside the growls, reinforcing the idea that we were utterly alone. "Climb the hill," he ordered, urgency giving his words strength. I followed his lead, scrambling for traction on the hillside. Each step felt like it might betray me. I glanced down. The creatures were almost upon us. As we reached the top, I turned to see him pull something from the bag slung across his shoulder. A small flare gun. "Here, take this," he said, thrusting it into my hands. "What's this for?" I asked, confusion mingling with dread. "Just trust me. If they get too close, we light it and make a distraction." I nodded, my hands trembling around the cold metal. The growlings were growing louder, and the creatures were surging forward, their shapes barely visible in the cloudy twilight. "Now," he yelled, and I raised the flare gun, my finger hovering over the trigger. But just as I was about to pull it, there was a rustle in the bushes to our left. Startled, I looked over, watching in horror as a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall and gaunt, its skin a sickly grey, eyes void of colour yet somehow alive. It stepped forward, seemingly unfazed by the chaos around it. The creatures hesitated, almost as if recognizing authority in this new being. Anxiety gripped my chest. I couldn't tell if this was our salvation or our doom. "What now?" I whispered, my throat dry as fear washed over me again. I don't know." The man's voice faltered, and I could see uncertainty etched across his face. Then, before we could react, the creature lunged forward and everything went dark. I woke up in total darkness. My heart raced as I pushed myself off the ground, my body sore and heavy. I could barely make sense of my surroundings. The air felt dense, saturated with unfamiliar smells, damp earth, decaying leaves, and something metallic. I groped for the flare gun, still clutched tightly in my hand. "Hey, are you okay?" I called out, my voice echoing in the emptiness. "Yeah," came the man's muffled response from nearby. He sounded disoriented. "Where are we?" "I don't know," I admitted, rising to my feet and stumbling forward. I reached up, tracing my fingers against the wall of what felt like damp stone. The chill seeped into my skin. "It's dark. I can't see anything." Just then, a low growl echoed through what I now realized was a cave, a cavernous expanse surrounding us. The sound sent chills down my spine. My mind raced. Had the creature knocked us out? Were we safe from it, or was it lurking just out of sight? We needed light. I flicked on the flare gun's safety and aimed it toward the sounds. "Here goes nothing," I whispered before pulling the trigger. The flare shot out with a hiss and exploded into a bright, fiery light, illuminating the cave around us. The man shielded his eyes. As the flare brightened the space, I glimpsed jagged rock formations and strange shadows shifting further into the darkness. But that wasn't all. Along the cave walls were scratches, deep, horizontal gouges made by something powerful. My stomach dropped. "Look at those," I breathed. "What could have done that?" "I don't know, but we need to move." His voice was steady, but I could hear the urgency behind it. We turned to head deeper into the cave, cautious of every step. More growls echoed, but this time from multiple sources. Panic bubbled within me as I felt the walls closing in, the heavy air pressing against my chest. "I don't think we're alone," I said, glancing at him. He nodded, his face pale but determined. We pushed onward, the light from the flare casting eerie shadows. Odd markings covered the walls like ancient symbols. I leaned closer to one and realized it looked almost like a twisted face, locked in an anguished scream. My skin crawled and I stumbled back. "Did you see that?" I asked, bewildered. "See what?" he replied, looking at me with concern. "That symbol. Something isn't right." Before he could respond, a piercing howl erupted from the darkness beyond our light. It was the sound of something in agony, and it sent an electric shiver through me. "Stay close," the man urged. "Let's hurry." We pressed deeper into the cave, the growls growing louder, mingling with the howls. The flare began to flicker, its light dimming as if mocking us. "Not now!" I shouted at the flare in frustration, but it expired with a sudden pop, plunging us back into darkness. Then just ahead, I caught a glimpse of a pair of glowing eyes, and then another. A circle of them materialized, surrounding us in the pitch black. "Run!" I yelled, adrenaline surging as the creatures emerged from the shadows, moving fast and low to the ground. We turned and bolted back the way we came, but I could feel the terror hot on our heels. I couldn't shake the sensation that the cave was alive. As the sounds of pursuit closed in, I knew we were in a fight for our lives. Then I heard a voice, clear and chilling. "You shouldn't have come here." I stumbled back, the voice echoing around us, merging with the growls of whatever was pursuing us. My pulse quickened and dread weighed down on my chest like lead. "Did you hear that?" I gasped, turning to the man who looked equally terrified. "Yeah, we need to move," he insisted, pushing forward. We ran, my breath coming in frantic bursts, the hard ground beneath us uneven and treacherous. It felt like we were being hunted, like the darkness itself was alive, clawing at our backs. A shadow darted in my peripheral vision, and I dared to glance behind us. Glowing eyes blinked in and out of view, keeping pace, and my stomach dropped. "Faster," I shouted. The cave twisted and turned, a labyrinth of stone and shadow. I couldn't see much, but I could hear the growls getting closer, echoing off the walls. I felt something brush against my skin, a rush of cold air that was almost a whisper. I shivered. Ahead, I spotted a faint glow barely visible through the shadows. A chance? I focused on it, pushing my legs hard. "This way," I called out, darting toward the light. As we neared, the glow intensified, revealing a narrow passageway. My heart sank when I saw what lay at the entrance, a thick, moss-covered stone slab nearly as tall as I was. "We'll never make it through that," I shouted, panic rising. "Try anyway," he yelled back. With a nod, we approached the slab. I scrambled to find any grip on its slick surface, shallow panic bubbling as I felt the weight of the growls closing in. Then I heard it again, that chilling voice. "You are not welcome." "Get down," I screamed, ducking as the ground beneath us shook. I stared wide-eyed as the slab began to shift, creaking ominously. "Now," he yelled, his voice cutting through the chaos. We dove to the side just as the stone slab crashed down, sealing off the passage behind us. Breathless and wound tight with fear, we collapsed against the cold rocks. I buried my head in my hands, trying to ground myself against the reality of where we were. I could still hear shuffling and growls just beyond the door, unable to break through. We had bought ourselves a moment, but at what cost? As I caught my breath, I noticed that the walls here were different. Covered with faint, luminescent symbols that pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, they drew me in. I leaned closer. "That's new," he commented, trying to catch his breath. "Maybe it's a warning," I said, tracing one of the glowing lines with my finger. "No, I think it's more than that," he replied, moving to my side. "It feels alive." Before I could process his words, a new sound emerged from the shadows, like chanting, low and rhythmic, reverberating through the cave. The creatures outside had stopped, their growls replaced by this eerie harmony. "Do you hear that?" I murmured, fear rising again as the chanting grew louder. "Yes, but what does it mean?" Then the symbols on the walls flared bright, illuminating the space. My heart raced when I heard the voice again, now blending with the chanting. "You should listen." "Listen to what?" I whispered, unease creeping over me. I found my eyes scanning every corner of the chamber as the darkness pulsed rhythmically, just like the glowing symbols. I felt a sharp tug of dread. And that's when I saw it. Something shifting in the shadows, something that felt much larger than the creatures pursuing us. The creature that emerged was unlike anything I had ever seen. It loomed before us, an amalgamation of shadows and dim light, shifting in and out of focus. Its eyes glowed a piercing white, reflecting some deeper wisdom, or perhaps cruelty. The chanting grew louder, resonating from its presence, like a warning wrapped in a melody. "What is this?" I whispered, fear clawing at my throat. The figure watched us, and even in the depths of the cave, I could feel its gaze cutting through me, piercing to the core. "Stay calm," the man said, though his voice betrayed a tremor. "We need to back away." But I found myself rooted in place, my body unwilling to move, while this entity pulsed before us. The symbols on the walls flickered as if alive, reacting to its presence, creating a mesmerizing dance of light and dark. "What do you want?" I finally managed to ask, my voice shaking. The figure didn't respond in words. Instead, the chanting grew louder, swirling around us, as if the cave itself was answering with ancient wisdom. I felt the weight of history pressing in, memories of a past infused with betrayal and loss. Stories that had survived in the form of the forest's whispers. The man, still by my side, clenched my hand tighter. "We need to go," he said desperately, trying to pull me away. But I felt drawn to the figure, unwilling to abandon the strange message reverberating through me. Suddenly the creature lunged forward, and a shockwave of power rushed through the cave. "You should have never come here." It echoed in a multitude of voices, dark and twisted. "Leave before it is too late." In that moment, the floor trembled beneath us, and I grabbed the man's arm, yanking him toward the stone slab we had narrowly escaped earlier. "We have to go," I shouted, urgency forcing my legs to move. Together we sprinted toward the slab, the weight of dread bearing down on us like the darkness itself was shifting closer. The growls echoed behind us, intertwining with our hurried breaths. Just as we reached the slab, I felt a jolt, a force pushing me forward. My feet stumbled, and I flung myself against the stone barricade, barely managing to keep my grip as the growls surged again. We burst past the suffocating tones of the cave, breaking into the moonlight that flooded the forest outside. But as I turned back to catch my breath, the forest felt different. Shadows deepened, swaying with a life of their own. My heart raced, but we were still alive. We'd escaped. "I can't believe we made it," I gasped, scanning the trees. But something flickered in the corner of my eye, more glowing eyes right at the tree line. They blinked slowly, knowingly. "Not yet," the man murmured beside me, his expression shifting from relief to wariness. "It's not over." "Why? What are those?" I turned, panic creeping in again. "It's never over in Hollow Creek," he replied, his gaze fixed on the darkness. Even as the adrenaline began to subside, an unease settled around us. The woods felt alive with the weight of all the secrets they held. I could still hear the distant whispers that had drawn me in to begin with. And the question lingered. Had we truly escaped, or had we merely shifted the danger? I glanced back at the now hidden cave, its entrance swallowed by shadows, still aware that part of me was somehow connected to its depths. Unable to shake off the feeling of being hunted, I began taking steps away from the tree line. I could almost hear the forest's soft murmurs warning me to leave, to not look back, and I didn't need much convincing. "I think it's time we got out of here," I said, a knot tightening in my stomach as the howls began again, echoing against the mountains. The man nodded, and we started to make our way back toward the road that led into town. The moon lit our path, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the woods weren't finished with us yet. "We'll have to tell everyone," I said, forcing the words past the lump in my throat. "About what we saw?" "Yes," he replied, but I could tell he was grappling with his own thoughts about the encounter. "But will they listen?" "They never have." I thought of the stories shared in the diner, of the locals' hesitation to speak. I thought about our surreal escape from sheer terror. I felt deeply unsettled, and I wasn't sure if it was the trees or perhaps my own lingering curiosity that clawed at me. Even as we walked further away from the woods, I could feel the echoes of the cave singing in my mind, a dark hymn resonating with a promise that, for better or worse, my tale wasn't over. I had ventured into Hollow Creek, and it left me with as many questions as I had sought to answer. As I looked back one last time, I could swear I saw a flicker of light deep within the trees.